everybody, and thank you for joining us for our interview with current tentacled artist Todd Dunning. Hi Todd, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great fun.
Yeah, you are truly a pioneer in the kinetic sculpting field. It's an honor. To have you here. The Tender Gold exhibition is all about shedding light on the artists of our community, whether you know them or not. We are truly a public art space in that sense. So let's begin. I want to let our audience get to know you a bit better as an artist. How and when did you become an artist?
Well, I think like a lot of people, like yourself and a lot of people watching the video, we all have artists inside us. And in my case, I decided, well, it's now or never, right? No reason to procrastinate. But I did stuff when I was a kid. I did David Smith type sculptures. I always liked three-dimensional sculpture. And I think the different thing in my case is that, as you'll notice, this stuff is moving. And I wanted to do something completely different that had never been done before. And IAMA is a great venue for that, for introducing new work that you've never seen before, that you'll probably never see anywhere else.
Thank you. So you've always been into sculpting then. How do you say that developed from the examples that you gave to these moving sculptures? How did you develop?
So in sculpture, there's a lot that's been done already, just as in painting. I approached this as needing to do something so different that it would require a whole new medium. And so I spent at least 3 or 4 years developing an entirely new medium that didn't use moving parts. It's completely silent, but most of all, they're artificially intelligent. And again, my goal as an artist was to develop pieces that are not about the artist. They're about themselves. They do whatever they want.
Absolutely, that AI aspect is truly the most fascinating thing to me. What inspired you to come to that such unique style and medium?
So the unique style and medium was, I thought in my case, I didn't want to wait to develop a style as I progressed. I wanted to launch more or less with something that was completely evolved and completely new.
What is the inspiration for these forms of these free-moving organic sculptures? What inspires you with each piece?
Well, each piece is an organism. Each piece decides what it wants to do on its own. They think for themselves. They don't have any kind of pre-programming of movement. They're deciding what they want to do at this point in time. They don't care whether you're looking at them, whether you're standing off in the corner or not. The title of this show is Night Beacon, because they are an individual beacon. And in a sense, the night is their loneliness in this space. These pieces I did for this show specifically to convey that to the viewer. The viewer can be part of the show by interacting with them, if the viewer chooses. The piece may or may not care whether the viewer is there, but there's a moment when you're here that you think, hey, that piece said something to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's been my experience, that everybody views movements of these sculptures differently. They mean different things to each person. How do you see the future? How do you see the future of your work? Where do you see yourself
So in this case, a lot of effort went into the mechanism, how they work, what they're doing to move, how they decide to move. And form was not really a primary. The form was not really important at that time. I think future pieces, as this evolve, will have more form elements to them be more complex, be doing more things. As you can tell, these are extremely minimal, and the idea aesthetically was simply moving lines, the absolute minimal aesthetic. So I think the next series, we may be going into geometric shapes, we may be going into cellular shapes that are more biological, but in every case, they're going to retain the same fundamental platform of it's its own entity. It's an artificially intelligent being that doesn't really care what you do. It's here doing its own thing, just like the rest of us.
Interesting. That's an interesting direction to see it go. What advice would you give to artists today? You know, the role of artists in society has changed quite a bit. It's evolving quite a bit. What would your advice be to artists getting themselves known today?
My advice to artists, if you want your career to go fast, is spend a lot of time doing unique work that you don't see anywhere else. Again, I spent years with an idea, with a vision, and hoping that I wasn't seeing anyone else do it. So far that hasn't happened yet. As you know, there's a whole lot of artists out there whose work you'll look at and you'll say, hey, that reminds me of somebody. It reminds me of this or that. I see a little. To me, that's a death sentence. But that's just where I'm coming from. I wanted to do stuff that really stood out, that people would go into the gallery and not forget it. It'd be the most important thing that they had seen there. So my advice to artists who are just starting out is, if you want to go fast, be very different. And I mean wildly different.
Yeah, I mean, in today's modern age, we interact with artists in such new ways. You have social media, and so standing out is hard. Standing out is hard now. You know, it's for artists to stand out from the crowd and be unique. Be unique artists just on your own.
It is, fortunately, I think, an advantage of the social media aspect is, you know, I was able to spend night after night on Pinterest or Instagram or Googling all the kinetic sculptures that were out there, and I just wanted to verify. I spent a lot of time just verifying that what I was doing was completely different. And it was worth following up and developing the engineering that was required for it. I don't like to talk about the engineering aspect of it very much, but it's been 3 years of full-time engineering that continues around the clock to keep these things going and reliably, and they look wonderful in gallery settings like this. They look wonderful in people's homes.
Yet that time and dedication that you give to each sculpture, as you said, how long in totality each of these things is really incredible. I admire that a lot. So going off of those terms, such as you say having a brain, or let's look behind us here, because we have this sculpture here in the center. It's called Roto 16, part of your Roto series. I want to now delve a little bit more into mechanically. Explain to us how these work.
Well, okay. Yeah, that took a very long time. And the engineering aspect is one that I tend to try and downplay, because it's not like traditional kinetic sculptures where the engineering is at the forefront, where you're basically admiring beautiful engineering. In this case, I wanted to hide that part. But the way they do work is, if you can think of an earthworm, it's kind of gross, but when an earthworm you cut up into little sections, as you know, each section becomes its own little worm and it keeps working. So we have a similar approach here, where every section, or every portion of it, has its own brain, has its own muscular system, and that brain is communicating with the other brains within the sculpture. So it can, I guess randomly is not the right word to use, but it's going through a decision tree where it decides, hey, I'm moving over here, and this is not moving. Do I want to move this section over here? Each section is kind of autonomous. So you have an artificially intelligent being that's deciding on its own what it wants to do.
Yeah, that's narrowing it down to that artificial intelligence is so that really gives us that insight then into how these sculptures move on their own, essentially take on a life of their own, so to speak. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Todd, so much again for being here with us today.
I wanted to thank you and the IAMA, Katrina, for doing such a great job, being great to work with, and curating a show that absolutely nobody's ever seen before. It's been really fun to be here, and I know there's going to be a lot more cool, innovative stuff that I want to keep track of.
It's true. It's truly something that you can see for yourself as nothing that you have ever experienced before. It's truly fascinating to me to see how each of these sculptures has a life of their own. And you can view Todd's exhibition, Night Beacon. It's on view at IAMA until June 28th. We hope to see you there.